Before we gather beneath the tree, before the carols begin, before the candles are lit and the gifts are wrapped, there is something you need to understand. What you celebrate every December 25th is not what you have been taught to believe. This is not a debate about whether Christmas has meaning, nor a judgment about whether it should be celebrated. This is history, documented, sourced, and verified history. History that traces how a season of blood was transformed into a season of light, how ritual killing became gift-giving, how conquered pagan peoples became Christian converts who never truly abandoned their old gods, and how every tradition you hold sacred, every symbol you decorate your home with, rests on nearly 2,000 years of violence, theological conflict, and deliberate erasure. We will follow Christmas back to its true beginning, not to a quiet manger in Bethlehem, but to Roman altars slick with blood, where pigs screamed as priests opened their throats. We will move north into Germanic forests where human bodies swayed from sacred trees. We will meet the historical St. Nicholas, not a gentle giver of gifts, but a man who struck a heretic across the face at a church council. We will walk through Puritan England, where celebrating Christmas could lead to prison or death. We will enter Victorian parlours, where Charles Dickens helped invent the Christmas many believe is ancient. And finally, we will arrive in modern corporate boardrooms, where Santa Claus was dressed in red to sell soft drinks. Every claim in this story is traceable, every date examined, every act of violence rooted in historical record. Every tradition explained not as it is softened for children, but as it actually unfolded. This is not a video about the so-called war on Christmas. It is not about greetings or politics. It is about what Christmas is, what it was, and what it has always been. A festival that survived by changing its mask, absorbing every culture it encountered, shifting from pagan to Christian to secular, while never fully shedding the blood-soaked foundation beneath it. If you value content that examines beloved traditions without sentimentality, that respects your ability to confront uncomfortable truths, and that presents deeply researched history through immersive storytelling meant to be experienced rather than passively watched, then subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a comment telling me which Christmas tradition you will never see the same way again. Because once you understand this, you cannot unknow it. Christmas has never been a single thing. It never was. It is layers upon layers of conquered festivals stacked so high that the original ground beneath them is no longer visible. Every candle you light traces its lineage to fire worship older than Christianity itself. Every gift you exchange echoes the moment humanity replaced child sacrifice with animal sacrifice. Every carol you sing is a rewritten hymn, once banned, forbidden, erased. Every decorated tree stands where sacred groves once grew, where bodies once hung as offerings to gods whose names have vanished, but whose presence still lingers every December, when the days grow short and something ancient stirs in the dark. So settle in, close your eyes, if you wish. What follows is comprehensive, immersive, and meant to be experienced in darkness. We do not begin with angels singing to shepherds. We begin with screams echoing through a Roman temple as the darkest days of December approach, days when the world itself was turned upside down for a week of sanctioned chaos, a festival that gave Christmas its date, its customs, and its original purpose. We begin 2 centuries before the birth of Christ. We begin with sacrifice. We begin with Saturnalia, and we begin with blood. Chapter 1. The Temple of Saturn, where Christmas learned to bleed. Christmas learned to bleed here. The priest's hands are red, not symbolically, not poetically, but literally. Blood coats his fingers, his palms, his wrists. A pig has just been slaughtered on the altar of Saturn in the Roman Forum. The blade was sharp, the cut was precise. The blood sprayed as it always does. He does not clean his hands. He is not meant to. The blood is sacred. The blood is required. This is the cost of 7 days of freedom. It is December 17th. The year hardly matters. This ritual has been repeated on this date for generations and will continue for generations more. The festival is Saturnalia, and it is the most important event in the Roman calendar. The pig dies quickly. Roman priests are experienced. They know where to cut, how deep to go, how to drain the blood into bronze basins without staining too much marble. When the animal stops moving, the work continues. The liver, the heart, the intestines are removed and examined carefully. These organs speak. They reveal whether Saturn is pleased, whether the festival may proceed. The signs are favorable. They always are. The priests know how to read them, or perhaps they know what must be seen. The meat is butchered immediately. Some is burned on the altar, the smoke rising towards Saturn, who sits bound within his own temple. Woolen cords wrap his feet all year long, symbolizing imprisonment. Only now, during these 7 days, are the bonds loosened. Saturn is free. The rest of the meat is distributed among the people. Everyone eats, slave and master, rich and poor. For 7 days, hierarchy dissolves. For 7 days, Saturn's golden age returns. A time before property, before law, before inequality. This is not metaphor, it is policy. At sunset on December 17th, Roman life officially changes. Courts close, businesses shut down, war cannot be declared, executions are forbidden. Most importantly, slaves are released from labor. Not permanently, not legally, but in practice. Masters serve slaves at the table. Authority is inverted. The world is turned upside down. We know this because it was recorded. A Roman writer named Macrobius preserved these details in a work called Saturnalia, written around the year 400 CE. Though he lived centuries after the Republic, he drew on earlier sources now lost, documenting how Romans had celebrated Saturnalia for generations. He describes the sacrifices, the feasts, the gifts, the freedom. He describes a festival so central to Roman identity that refusing to participate marked a person as un-Roman. But Macrobius also preserves something darker. He notes, citing earlier historians, that in ancient times, Saturnalia did not involve animals, but humans. That the cords binding Saturn's feet once bound living victims. That the wax figurines Romans exchanged as gifts, called sigillaria, were substitutes for something far older and far more terrible. We cannot prove direct human sacrifice during historical Saturnalia. No Roman text states it plainly. But we know this. Rome's greatest enemy, Carthage, sacrificed children to Baal Hammon, a god the Romans identified with Saturn. Archaeology confirms it. Thousands of cremated infant remains have been found in Carthage's sacred precinct, the Tophet. And when Rome destroyed Carthage in 146 BCE, they found a civilization that had fed its children to fire for centuries in Saturn's name. We also know that Saturnalia shares structural features with sacrifice-based festivals across the ancient world. Temporary freedom, role reversal. A mock king who rules briefly, then loses power, sometimes dying when the festival ends. These patterns appear again and again in cultures where human sacrifice is documented. The Aztec Toxcatl, the Mesopotamian Akitu, Celtic winter rites. Festivals where order collapses so it can be reborn. Rome was not unique. Rome was typical. Every ancient culture that marked the winter solstice did so with sacrifice, because the solstice meant death. The sun reached its weakest point. Darkness dominated, crops failed. The world appeared to be dying. Something had to be given to ensure its return. Blood was that gift. By the time Rome left written records, it was animal blood, but the memory of human blood lingered. It haunted the rituals, the temporary king who falls, the wax bodies given as gifts, the exaggerated equality of the festival, as if compensating for victims who had lost all freedom, all status, all life. Once the sacrifice is complete, the transformation begins. Romans remove their togas, the garments of citizenship and hierarchy, and put on the synthesis, colourful informal clothing. Everyone wears the pileus, a felt cap symbolising freedom. Normally, only freed slaves wear it. During Saturnalia, everyone does. Everyone is free. Gambling begins. Dice games, illegal the rest of the year, are now mandatory. Romans gamble openly, obsessively. This is not rebellion, it is ritual. Disorder is required. What is forbidden becomes compulsory. What is compulsory becomes forbidden. Sexual boundaries dissolve as well. Poets celebrate it. Philosophers complain about it. Prostitution flourishes. Temporary unions form. This is not mere indulgence, it is fertility magic. Life must be encouraged. The world must be reminded how to reproduce itself. Feasting follows. Tables overflow with food. Rich and poor eat together. Masters feed slaves. This reflects Saturn's golden age, when no one owned more than anyone else, when abundance was shared. Then come the gifts. Small tokens are exchanged throughout the festival. Candles, pottery, wax figurines. Adults give to children. Friends exchange symbols of generosity. These gifts commemorate the golden age, but they also carry shadows. The human-shaped wax figures stand in for what once stood on the altar. Presiding over all of this is the Saturnalian prince, the lord of misrule. Chosen by lot, he rules absolutely for the duration of the festival. He issues absurd commands. He inverts dignity. His authority is total and temporary. When the festival ends, he returns to nothing. The inversion always ends. This structure existed for centuries before Christianity reached Rome. By the time Christians arrived preaching a crucified Messiah, Saturnalia was ancient, beloved, and impossible to remove. Early Christians did not celebrate Christmas. They celebrated Easter. The Gospels give no date for Jesus' birth, and no command to observe it. Church leaders actively discouraged birthday celebrations as pagan. Origen condemned them. Tertullian warned Christians away from Roman festivals. But as Christianity grew, from persecuted sect to imperial religion under Constantine, it faced a problem. How do you eliminate Saturnalia? You don't. You absorb it. You take the date. You take the customs. You take the emotional power. And you change the story. December 25th appears as Christ's birth date for the first time in a Roman calendar from 336 CE. The choice was not random. Saturnalia ended on December 23rd. 2 days later came the festival of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, whose worship Constantine himself had promoted. The winter solstice marked the sun's rebirth, light defeating darkness, life returning from death. The church placed Christ precisely there, same date, same themes, new theology. By the year 500, Christmas existed as a hybrid, Christian in name, pagan in structure, ancient in emotional content. It satisfied church authorities who wanted to eliminate paganism and ordinary people who refused to give up their winter festival. But Rome was only the beginning. The blood beneath Christmas flows from Roman altars, but it pools deeper in the forests of the north, where trees were not decorations but gateways, where gods demanded hanging, and where winter demanded more than symbolic sacrifice. We must go north now. We must enter the forest. We must see what hung from the branches of Yggdrasil. Chapter 2. The Hanging God. Yule's sacrificial groves. The body sways gently in the winter wind. It has been hanging for 3 days in a sacred grove at the edge of the forest. The rope around the neck is leather, carefully made, ritually prepared. This man was not a criminal. He was not punished. He was chosen. We know this because 15 centuries later, when his body is pulled from a Danish bog where it was deliberately placed after death, his stomach contents tell a story. He ate a ceremonial meal, grains, seeds, barley, before he died. His hands show no signs of labor. He was not a slave. He was prepared. He was honored. This is Yule, the Germanic winter solstice festival, and it begins with the god who hanged himself. Norse mythology, preserved in the Poetic Edda and Prose Edda. Written down in Iceland in the 13th century but rooted in much older oral tradition, tells us what this death meant. Odin, the Allfather, sacrificed himself to himself. He hung from Yggdrasil, the world tree, for 9 days and 9 nights. He was pierced by his own spear. He was denied food and water. He suffered. He screamed. And at the edge of death, he saw the runes, the hidden structure of reality, and seized them. He died, and he returned transformed. This was not merely a myth. It was a template. It was instruction. It was a ritual pattern meant to be repeated when the sun weakened and the world threatened to fail. Knowledge required sacrifice. Renewal demanded death. And the sacrifice had to be meaningful. It had to be human. Roman writers confirm this. Tacitus, writing in Germania around 98 CE, describes the religious practices of the Germanic tribes based on reports from soldiers and traders. He writes that the gods were believed to delight in human blood. He describes sacred groves where entry required binding oneself, symbolically becoming an offering. He portrays rituals he finds horrifying but acknowledges as central to social and religious cohesion. 4 centuries later, Adam of Bremen records similar practices in Scandinavia. Writing around 1070 CE, after official Christianization but while pagan customs persisted, he describes the great temple at Uppsala. Every 9 years, a massive festival was held. 9 males of every species, including humans, were sacrificed. Their bodies were hung in a sacred grove nearby. Each tree was considered holy, sanctified by death and decay feeding its roots. Archaeology supports these accounts. The Tolland man, discovered in a Danish bog in 1950, lived around 400 BCE. He was hanged with a leather noose still intact. His body was carefully placed in the bog. His face appears calm. He likely did not struggle. The ritual meal in his stomach confirms preparation, not punishment. Another bog body, the Grauballer man, from roughly 300 BCE, had his throat cut from ear to ear before being placed in the water. Like Tolland man, he was well fed, not a labourer, not a criminal. He was selected. Bogs mattered. They were liminal spaces, neither land nor water, neither life nor death. They were thresholds between worlds. Bodies placed in bogs were not buried. They were offered. Why hang people during Yule? Why cut throats and leave bodies in groves and wetlands? Because Odin was the hanging god. Because the myth demanded reenactment. Because the sun had to be convinced to return. Winter solstice meant danger. Darkness peaked. The old year was dying. Without intervention, the world might not recover. An intervention required offering something of value, something human. These sacrifices served many purposes at once. They appeased gods who controlled weather and fertility. They ensured spring followed winter. They renewed kingship by mirroring divine sacrifice. They reinforced cosmic order by repeating creation's original patterns. And they fed the sacred trees that connected earth to heaven. To the Germanic peoples, the sacred grove was not a site of horror. It was the holiest place imaginable. Bodies hanging from branches, decomposing through winter, dripping blood and fluids into the soil, feeding the roots. This was consecration. Death produced life. Sacrifice generated blessing. The victim became part of the tree, the god, the land itself. Animal sacrifice accompanied human offerings. Horses were especially sacred. Odin's eight-legged horse, Sleipnir, carried him between worlds. Sacrificing horses honored Odin directly. Their blood was collected and sprinkled on altars, walls, and participants. Blood sanctified everything it touched. It marked protection, belonging, favor. An Arab traveler named Ibn Fadlan witnessed similar rituals in 922 CE among the Norse. He was appalled by the violence and the casual joy surrounding it. He described funerals where slave women were killed and placed with their masters. He noted the drinking, the celebration, the belief that death was necessary and good. The feast following sacrifice was sacred communion. The meat, mostly animal, possibly human, was boiled and distributed. Everyone ate. Eating bound the community together and bound them to the gods. You became what you consumed. You absorbed the sacred. You joined the cycle of giving and receiving. Ale was essential. Yule ale, brewed from the year's best grain, was consumed in ritual quantity. Toasting followed strict order, first to Odin for victory, then to Njord and Freyr for peace and harvest, then to the king, then to the dead ancestors. This was not casual drinking. It was ritual intoxication. Altered consciousness allowed contact with gods and spirits. During Yule's 12 days, the boundary between worlds thinned. The dead walked, magic worked, and the wild hunt rode. Odin led his spectral host, the honored dead, across the winter sky. Hearing the hunt meant danger. Anyone caught outside could be killed, taken, or driven mad. People hid indoors, sealed shutters, stayed silent until the thunder of hooves passed. This belief survived Christianization. Medieval chronicles across Europe described the wild hunt. Though Odin's name was replaced with devils or cursed nobles, the hunt remained real to those who feared it. Behavior was shaped around avoiding it. Yule was liminal time, sacred and dangerous. Normal rules did not apply. When Christianity reached Germanic lands, it faced the same problem it had faced in Rome. How do you eliminate a festival this ancient, this beloved, this necessary? You don't. You absorb it. The church kept the date, the feasting, the 12 days, the greenery, the fire, and it changed the meaning. The 12 days of Christmas are Yule renamed. Greenery brought indoors once housed spirits and honored gods. Now it symbolized eternal life in Christ. The Yule log, an enormous sacred trunk burned continuously, was reframed as Christ's light, though peasants continued whispering old prayers as it burned. Ashes were saved for protection and fertility. Mistletoe survived despite church condemnation. It was sacred and dangerous, both lethal and healing. Kissing beneath it is fertility magic, not Christian symbolism. The church tried to ban it. People ignored them. The Christmas tree appears in written records in the 16th century, but its roots are far older. Trees were sacred, spirits lived in them. Offerings hung from branches, blood fed their roots. Early Christmas trees were decorated with apples, wafers, and gingerbread. Apples echoed Eden and the Norse apples of immortality. Wafers recalled communion and older ritual cakes. Gingerbread figures echoed wax substitutes, and before them, human offerings. The tree stands in your home because bodies once hung from trees. You bring it inside because sacred wilderness protects domestic space. You decorate it because offerings belong on sacred branches. You place a star on top because the world tree connects earth, heaven, and the divine. Every year you recreate the sacred grove. Every year you honor gods whose names you no longer know. And yet Christmas was not finished changing. Before it became sentimental and domestic, it had to survive being outlawed, declared sinful, criminalized by Christians who recognized how pagan it truly was. To understand that, we must move forward. We must reach the Puritans, and we must watch them try to kill Christmas. Chapter 3. Christmas Executed. The Puritan War. The soldiers do not knock. They enter the house on December 25th, 1647, in Canterbury, England, carrying legal authority and moral certainty. Inside, a family sits around a table. A goose has been roasted. Bread has been cut. Ale has been poured. The children wear their finest clothes. Holly decorates the walls. Every detail is illegal. Parliament has outlawed Christmas, not discouraged it, not questioned it, banned it outright. The feast is confiscated. The holly is torn down. A fine is issued. If the family cannot pay, the father will be imprisoned. The children cry. The mother protests. None of it matters. Christmas is forbidden. This scene is not unique. It is repeated across England during the Commonwealth period, when Puritans control Parliament and enforce their vision of purified Christianity. In that vision, Christmas does not belong. This is not persecution driven by chaos or hysteria. It is law, rationally constructed and deliberately enforced. The Puritan objection to Christmas rests on two pillars: theology and morality. Theologically, Christmas has no foundation in Scripture. The Bible provides no date for the birth of Jesus. The Gospels record no celebration of it by the apostles. Early Christians did not observe Christmas at all. The festival emerges centuries later, formalized by the Catholic Church, an institution Puritans regard as corrupt, idolatrous, and apostate. Holy days beyond the Sabbath are deeply suspect. God ordained one day of rest. Creating additional holy days is human presumption, an unlawful addition to divine command. Christmas, Easter, Whitsuntide, these are Catholic inventions. They must be eliminated. Morally, Christmas represents everything Puritans despise. In early 17th century England, Christmas is loud, chaotic, and excessive. Feasting replaces restraint. Drinking is expected. Gambling flourishes. Sexual boundaries loosen. Servants mock masters. Social hierarchy bends, sometimes breaks. For Puritans, this is not joy. It is sin institutionalized. They see no meaningful difference between Christmas and pagan festivals like Saturnalia. Both involve excess. Both invert social order. Both encourage appetite over discipline. Both dishonor God. When Puritans gain power during the English Civil War, they act decisively. Parliament declares that December 25th must be observed as a day of fasting and humiliation, not celebration. Feasting becomes sinful. Celebration becomes rebellion. The reaction is immediate and explosive. Christmas is the most beloved festival of the year. It is when scarcity becomes abundance, when hardship pauses, when joy is permitted. Taking it away creates resentment that simmers just below violence. Soon, Parliament goes further. Christmas is abolished entirely, along with Easter and other traditional holy days. The new Directory for Public Worship makes no mention of Christmas at all. Churches are forbidden to hold special services. Ministers who preach Christmas sermons face removal. Then enforcement tightens. Shops are ordered to remain open on December 25th. Markets must operate. Anyone caught celebrating Christmas by feasting, decorating, or refusing to work can be fined or imprisoned. This is not moral pressure. It is criminalization. Soldiers patrol streets. They peer into windows. They listen for singing. They smell for roasting meat. When violations are discovered, they enter homes without warrants, confiscate food, tear down decorations, and arrest celebrants. People resist. In Canterbury, riots erupt when the mayor enforces the ban. Shops that refuse to open are vandalized. The mayor is assaulted. Traditional Christmas football matches are played in the streets as deliberate acts of defiance. Military reinforcements are summoned. The unrest lasts for days. The following year creates a theological crisis. Christmas Day falls on a Sunday, Puritans insist Sunday must be observed as Sabbath. But Christmas is banned. Which command takes precedence? In Ipswich, apprentices exploit the contradiction. They seize control of the town. They declare a lord of misrule, the traditional festival king. Shops are forced to close. Public celebration erupts openly. Authorities eventually respond with violence. Leaders are arrested. Some are executed, not for celebrating Christmas itself, but for riot, rebellion, and defying lawful authority. Christmas has become political. Celebrating it signals loyalty to the old royalist order, to the executed King Charles, to everything the Commonwealth opposes. To celebrate Christmas is to declare defiance. Royalist propagandists seize the opportunity. Pamphlets appear defending Christmas as ancient English tradition. One portrays Christmas as a benevolent old man being murdered by joyless fanatics. The image is powerful and memorable. Christmas becomes the victim. Puritans become executioners. Under Oliver Cromwell's rule, enforcement remains strict, but uneven. In cities, soldiers patrol and intimidate. In rural villages, enforcement is impossible. Too many communities. Too few enforcers. People adapt. They close shutters, muffle sounds, hide food, celebrate quietly while pretending obedience. Tradition survives underground. In Scotland, suppression goes even further. The Presbyterian Church bans Christmas so thoroughly that for more than 3 centuries it is not an official holiday. Shops remain open. Churches hold no services. Celebration shifts to New Year's Eve, Hogmanay, which carries no Christian association and thus avoids prohibition. Across the Atlantic, Puritan colonists bring their hostility to Christmas with them. In Massachusetts, a law declares that anyone found observing Christmas, by resting from labor, feasting, or celebration, must pay a fine. For poor families, the penalty is severe. The law remains in effect for decades. Even after repeal, New England culture rejects Christmas for generations. It is Catholic, it is Anglican, it is not Puritan, therefore it is not American. Schools remain open, businesses operate normally, churches ignore December 25th entirely. Christmas does not meaningfully exist in New England until the 19th century, when immigration and cultural change finally soften resistance. In England, the ban collapses with the restoration of the monarchy. When King Charles II returns, Christmas returns immediately. The first celebration after the ban is reportedly the most riotous in living memory. Theatres reopen. Forbidden plays are performed. Feasting resumes on an extravagant scale. Churches overflow with music and ceremony. But the Puritan experiment leaves permanent marks. It proves that Christmas, despite lacking biblical mandate, is culturally essential. People will not abandon it, even under threat of imprisonment. It reveals something uncomfortable. Christmas is not primarily about theology. It answers deeper needs, the need for light in darkness, for celebration during hardship, for temporary escape from hierarchy and scarcity. The failure also proves something else. Christmas cannot be morally reformed. If Puritans with full government power cannot eliminate excess, no one can. The Church of England accepts this reality. Christmas returns as a hybrid festival, part sacred, part profane, impossible to control, but too important to destroy. Yet Puritan skepticism does not disappear. It persists in Protestant denominations well into the 19th century. Churches debate whether Christmas should be observed at all. Some reject it outright as unbiblical tradition. What ultimately defeats resistance is not theology, it is culture. As Christmas becomes increasingly secular, focused on family, sentiment, and gifts, religious objections lose force. By the turn of the 20th century, Christmas is unavoidable. Economics drives it. Society demands it. resistance collapses. The Puritans prove something crucial. Christmas is not a Christian holy day defensible by Scripture. It is a cultural festival that Christianity absorbed but never controlled. Its pagan elements, excess, inversion, midwinter celebration, are stronger than any doctrine imposed upon them. Christmas can be reinterpreted, it can be commercialized, it can be secularized, but it cannot be killed. The Puritans tried with law, soldiers, prisons, and theology. They failed because Christmas answers to something older than Christianity. It answers to human need. The need to defy winter, to feast in scarcity, to give in hardship, to find light when darkness dominates. That need existed before Christ was born. It will exist long after theology changes again. The Puritans could not defeat it. No one ever has. But if the Puritans could not kill Christmas, who resurrected it? Who reshaped the wounded festival into the version the modern world recognizes? For that, we must go to Victorian England. We must meet Charles Dickens, and we must watch him invent modern Christmas. Chapter 4. Dickens' Ghost, the Victorian Invention. The candle burns low in Charles Dickens' study. It is October 1843. Dickens is writing quickly, urgently, driven by financial pressure and creative obsession. He has 6 weeks to finish the manuscript before Christmas. The story pours out of him. A miser haunted by ghosts, a journey through memory, suffering, and fear, ending in redemption and joy. He does not know he is inventing modern Christmas. He believes he is writing a moral tale, an argument for generosity, compassion, and social responsibility. But A Christmas Carol will shape how Christmas is celebrated more powerfully than any church decree, theological debate, or ancient custom. By the 1840s, Christmas in England is dying. The medieval traditions are fractured. The Puritan bans severed cultural transmission. The Industrial Revolution has transformed time itself. Factory labor runs year-round. Time off is scarce. Celebration is impractical for working people whose survival depends on constant labor. Christmas still exists, but faintly. It lacks coherence. It lacks emotional power. It is slipping into irrelevance. Dickens resurrects it, not as it was, but as something new. A Christmas Carol is published on December 19, 1843. 6,000 copies sell in the first week. By January, it is sold out. Pirated editions flood the market. Stage adaptations appear within months. The story embeds itself instantly and permanently into English culture. Its plot is simple. Ebenezer Scrooge, a miser who despises Christmas, is visited on Christmas Eve by 3 spirits. The ghost of Christmas past shows him lost innocence and emotional wounds. The ghost of Christmas present reveals warmth, family, and joy that exist without him. The ghost of Christmas yet to come shows him dying alone, unmourned, his wealth meaningless. Scrooge wakes transformed. He becomes generous, joyful, communal. He saves Tiny Tim. He raises Bob Cratchit's wages. He becomes the embodiment of Christmas spirit. The story is sentimental. It is moralistic. It is emotionally manipulative. And it works. It works because it synthesizes Victorian anxiety and offers resolution without revolution. Victorian England is brutal. Industrial capitalism creates immense wealth and immense poverty, often side by side. Children labor in factories. Cities choke with pollution and disease. Class divisions appear permanent. Work is endless. Life is harsh. Christmas becomes escape. For one day, perhaps 12 if you are fortunate, you can pretend that family matters more than money, that generosity outweighs profit, that human connection transcends class. Dickens makes this fantasy explicit. Scrooge represents capitalism at its coldest, efficient, calculating, indifferent to suffering. His transformation represents what Victorians desperately want to believe, that the system does not need to change, only the hearts within it. The poor do not overthrow the rich become kinder. This is crucial. Christmas becomes moral anesthesia, a way to feel compassionate without demanding structural change. A Christmas Carol also standardizes Christmas itself. It popularizes the family-centered celebration focused on children. The lavish Christmas dinner, turkey, pudding, abundance. Charity toward the poor, ghost stories told at Christmas. The idea that Christmas is a time for moral transformation. Dickens writes 4 more Christmas books. None rival Carol, but they reinforce the message. Christmas is about warmth, feeling, generosity, redemption. Sentiment becomes tradition. At the same time, material culture catches up. The Christmas tree becomes central. Though rooted in German tradition, it spreads rapidly after Queen Victoria and Prince Albert display a decorated tree at Windsor Castle. In 1848, an engraving of the royal family around the tree is published and reprinted widely. If the Queen has a Christmas tree, everyone wants one. By the 1850s, trees appear in middle-class homes. By the 1870s, they are nearly universal where families can afford them. The tree is the perfect Victorian symbol, nature domesticated, wilderness civilized, beauty controlled and displayed. It also conveniently obscures its pagan origins. Christmas cards appear simultaneously. In 1843, the same year as A Christmas Carol, Sir Henry Cole commissions the first commercial Christmas card. It depicts a family raising glasses in celebration. By the 1860s, printing advances make cards affordable. Millions are sent annually. Snow scenes, robins, holly, sentimental verses circulate across Britain and America, maintaining emotional bonds in an increasingly mobile society where families are separated by industrial migration. The Christmas cracker follows. Invented in 1847, it adds surprise, humor, ritualized play to the dinner table. Paper crowns, jokes, small gifts, light-hearted chaos carefully contained. Carol singing is revived and sanitized. Once associated with rowdy begging and implied threat, it is transformed into respectable middle-class performance. New carols are written. Old ones are republished in collections presented as ancient tradition. By the late 19th century, caroling is wholesome rather than threatening. The Victorian Christmas centers not on church, but on home. The crucial moments occur in private domestic space, decorating the tree, opening gifts, sharing meals. Church attendance is optional. Family gathering is mandatory. This reflects Victorian ideology of separate spheres. Men inhabit public life. Women control the home. Christmas becomes women's labor. Decorating, cooking, organizing, creating emotional atmosphere. Men provide money. Women create magic. Gift-giving expands dramatically. What were once small tokens become elaborate exchanges. Toys for children, jewelry, books, clothing for adults. Gifts express affection, refinement, social status. Knowing what to give becomes proof of intimacy. Department stores exploit this perfectly. They create elaborate Christmas window displays. They advertise heavily. They frame shopping as emotional duty. By the 1880s, Christmas shopping dominates November and December. The poor are included, but as recipients, not participants. Victorian Christmas charity is conspicuous and hierarchical. Food baskets, coal, clothing, public generosity that reinforces class difference while claiming moral virtue. Scrooge exemplifies this. He gives generously, but the system remains intact. Bob Cratchit stays an employee. Poverty is softened, not eliminated. Christmas does not challenge inequality, it sentimentalizes it. Nostalgia becomes central. Victorians portray Christmas as ancient English tradition, unchanged for centuries. This is false. Christmas is changing rapidly. But Victorians need to believe in continuity. Industrialization, empire, urbanization create instability. Christmas provides imagined permanence. Invented tradition satisfies psychological need. By 1900, Victorian Christmas feels eternal. People forget how new it is. They believe they are celebrating something ancient. They are wrong and correct. Victorian Christmas is traditional, but the tradition is barely 180 years old. In Christmas's 2,000-year evolution, this is recent. Victorians did not restore Christmas. They assembled it from Roman gift-giving, Germanic greenery, medieval feasting, saintly charity, and added sentiment, domesticity, child focus, moral narrative. They sold it brilliantly. The British Empire exports it. American cultural and economic power amplifies it. By 1950, Victorian Christmas is global Christmas. Local variations survive, but the core remains. Family, tree, gifts, feast, sentiment, charity. This is cultural imperialism disguised as warmth. Indigenous winter festivals are absorbed or erased. Resistance is minimal because Victorian Christmas is appealing. Who would reject joy, family, generosity? But beneath the sentiment lies capitalism's perfect holiday. Christmas requires consumption, food, gifts, decorations, cards, trees, all purchased. Shopping becomes expression of love. Emotional fulfillment becomes transactional. Retailers extend the season. Advertisers refine techniques. Christmas becomes economic engine. By 1900, commercialization is well underway. Ironically, the Victorians, who invented Christmas to soften capitalism's brutality, transform it into capitalism's most powerful tool. But commercialization has only begun. The 20th century will industrialize Christmas, globalize it, and turn it into a machine generating hundreds of billions annually. The key to that transformation is a figure the Victorians marginalize: St. Nicholas. We must leave Victorian England now. We must cross the Atlantic. We must watch American commerce take a 4th century bishop, strip away theology, discomfort and challenge, and create the most successful advertising icon in history. We must meet Santa Claus, and we must understand that he is not St. Nicholas. He is something new, something American, something designed to make you buy. Chapter 5. Santa Claus Incorporated, The Commercial Conquest. The man in the red suit is not real. You already know this, and yet every December he appears everywhere. He smiles from billboards and shop windows. He sits in shopping malls and on television screens. He enters homes through stories told to children who either believe or pretend to believe. He is jolly, round, white-bearded, eternally cheerful. He watches you. He judges you. He rewards you. And he asks for only one thing in return: consumption. This figure, Santa Claus, is the final product of Christmas's long transformation. What began as a ritual sacrifice, seasonal survival, and religious observance has ended as a global shopping season. Santa is not an accident of culture. He is its most successful invention. The man behind the myth was once real. St. Nicholas of Myra lived in the late 3rd and early 4th centuries in what is now modern-day Turkey. He was a Christian bishop, remembered for fierce devotion, generosity to the poor, and protection of the vulnerable. Legends describe him secretly providing dowries to impoverished girls, rescuing sailors from storms, and defending innocent children. He was not playful. He was not gentle. He was not designed to entertain. He was also not originally connected to Christmas. Nicholas's feast day fell on December 6th. Gift-giving occurred then, not on December 25th. When Protestant reformers rejected the veneration of saints, Nicholas could not survive in his original form. To persist, he had to change, and change he did. Dutch settlers carried a transformed version of Nicholas, Santa Claus, to the New World in the 17th century. He became a folkloric figure rather than a religious one. He arrived bearing gifts. He judged children's behavior. He was no longer a bishop of the church, but a character of the season. The American reinvention began deliberately. In the early 19th century, writers and artists reshaped this figure to fit a new cultural need. Washington Irving invented traditions and attributed them to colonial Dutch settlers who had never practiced them. Clement Clarke Moore's 1823 poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, completed the transformation. The stern saint became a right jolly old elf. He shrank in stature. He laughed. He travelled by sleigh. He entered homes through chimneys. He moved from December 6th to Christmas Eve. Most importantly, he became secular. Santa no longer required faith, theology, or church attendance. He rewarded morality, not belief. Good behavior earned gifts. Bad behavior earned nothing. This moral system was perfectly compatible with capitalism. It was simple. It was transactional. By the late 19th century, visual artists like Thomas Nast fixed Santa's appearance: the white beard, the red suit, the North Pole workshop, the list of naughty and nice children. Santa became predictable, repeatable, and marketable. The 20th century finished the job. Department stores recognized Santa's power before churches or theologians did. By the late 1800s, children were invited to sit on Santa's lap inside stores and tell him what they wanted. Parents listened. Shopping lists formed themselves. Christmas desire was externalized and commercialized in one brilliant stroke. Then came Coca-Cola. Beginning in 1931, Coca-Cola launched a decades-long advertising campaign that standardized Santa's image worldwide. Their Santa was warm, grandfatherly, friendly, and endlessly consuming Coca-Cola. The red suit became universal. The smile became permanent. The association between Christmas and consumption became unbreakable. By mid-century, Santa Claus was no longer folklore. He was infrastructure. Corporations followed the model. Toys, jewelry, electronics, cameras, everything became a Christmas necessity. Advertising did not merely suggest gifts. It defined love itself as purchasing power. To give less was to love less. To spend more was to care more. Children became primary targets. Television programming in the post-war era blurred entirely into advertising. Toy-based cartoons existed to sell merchandise. Artificial scarcity created panic. Parents fought crowds and debt to avoid disappointing children on Christmas morning. The fear of emotional failure drove irrational spending. Music joined the machine. Christmas songs filled stores because they worked. Studies showed they increased generosity, reduced price sensitivity, and triggered nostalgia. Even criticism of commercialization, like A Charlie Brown Christmas, became profitable intellectual property. Resistance was absorbed, repackaged, and sold. Religion quietly exited the stage. Jesus, once the central figure of Christmas, became optional. Santa was safer. Snowflakes were safer. Reindeer were safer. Retailers did not want theology. They wanted universality. Happy Holidays was not ideological. It was profitable. By the end of the 20th century, Christmas had become economic bedrock. Entire industries depended on it. In the United States alone, Christmas generated hundreds of billions annually. Globally, the figure reached into the trillions. This was no longer a holiday. It was an economic system. The environmental cost was enormous. Waste, plastic, shipping, deforestation, energy consumption, all dismissed as the price of joy. Criticism was labeled joyless, cynical, anti-Christmas. And yet, Christmas spread. Non-Christian societies adopted it with enthusiasm, stripping it of religion entirely and retaining only the commercial shell. trees, lights, gifts, Santa, no theology required. This was Christmas in its purest capitalist form. Which raises the final question: what is Christmas really? The tree in your home is many things at once. It is a pagan symbol of life in winter, a Roman decoration, a Christian metaphor, a Victorian invention, a retail sales tool. None of these meanings cancels the others. All of them coexist. Christmas has no fixed essence. Across history, it has meant whatever people needed it to mean: survival, rebellion, control, comfort, profit. It absorbs cultures. It serves power. It adapts to survive. And yet, it endures for a reason. Humans need ritual. We need light in darkness. We need moments that break ordinary time. Christmas delivers this imperfectly, hypocritically, commercially, but it delivers it. The joy may be manufactured, the symbols may be borrowed, the meanings may be invented, but the feeling is real. And that is why Christmas survives. It is not sacred, it is human. You now know what lies beneath the tree: the blood, the myth, the commerce, the adaptation. What you do with that knowledge is your choice. Celebrate consciously, reject it entirely, redefine it on your own terms. Christmas will continue regardless. It always has, because in the darkest part of the year, humans will always create light and call it something meaningful.